formidable problems, much more so than in the past. So if we grow by 7%, it should be okay. Now, this is the kind of attitude that we are seeing around Asia these days. You're seeing Mr. Xi Jinping in China attaching great importance on governance, going through all this corruption, trying to eliminate all kinds of corruption practices throughout China. Never seen this kind of practice before in China. You see the rise of Mr. Modi in India, who comes up with his plan to help privatize Indian economy more, to reduce the license large. They call it license large when the government gives out licenses in everywhere. So Mr. Modi having been very successful, I think in Gujarat, when he was in Gujarat, he's now trying to apply the same model from Gujarat, which is very liberal economy, to the whole of India. I don't know whether he would be successful with that. For this, I just reminded, I have to recommend these two books to you, but you know them probably better than me. There are two good books on India which will show the kind of dilemma that Asia is facing today. There is one good book by Professor Amartya Sen, another Nobel laureate, with his colleague Jean Reyes. This is a book called An Uncertain Glory, India and Its Contradictions. And there's another book which says something like the opposite of what the Sen book was saying. This is my friend's book, Jagdish Pakwadi's book with Arvind Panagariya. This is a book which is called Why Growth Matters: How Economic Growth in India Reduced Poverty and the Lesson for Other Developing Countries. One book, Sen was saying that India cannot grow like this. You look at India 20 years ago, India in social terms was doing far better than, for example, its neighbor Bangladesh. 20-year-olds with high growth. India now has lower life expectancy and higher child mortality than Bangladesh. How can this be possible? India has more than 50 billionaires, 500 channels television, but still 1/3 of the population living with no electricity. So again, Sen was saying that you cannot grow and then you just wish all this away. The state has to get involved. Why? Well, Jagdish was saying just the opposite. He said, well, no, you have to leave it to the market. So this is something that just, my time is coming to an end. This is a model that Asia has to change to. On capitalism, how is Asia going to approach the way the world is going to liberalize? And sometime at the moment, there is a counter force against globalization. A lot more restrictive trade measures are being put on the board in terms of non-tariff barriers. We're seeing all this. You are seeing multilateral negotiations failing from all the time in climate, in finance, in trade. So we're not seeing this kind of globalization to capitalism working well. In terms of democracy, I think you must have heard what our practices were saying in terms of interpretation of democracy in Asia. There's different interpretation of democracies. Who's right, who's wrong? And I was always reminded of the saying of Mr. Lee Kuan Yew, who always say that we always have our own value. There's an Asian value to democracy, so sometimes you have to allow us to use our democracy. And in terms of governance, this is something that I think we should have the same mindset that whatever we do, Asia will have to work on rules of law. That's why all this integration effort in Asia, all these efforts are so important. Asia has never done so much in terms of integration as in the last 5 or 6 years. We have gone into ASEAN completion of the ASEAN free trade area. We have gone into the ASEAN economic community. The ASEAN economic community is going to take up 6 more countries. China, Japan, Korea, India, New Zealand, Australia, to make it ASEAN +6, what we call regional economic partnership agreement, the RCEP. Here in came the United States with the ideas of Trans-Pacific Partnership. China last year in the meeting, APEC meeting in Beijing, came up with the FTAAP, Free Trade Area of Asia and Pacific. So all this actually integration effort in Asia are pointing towards the need for Asia to cushion itself, to trade more among itself, to make use of the global regional supply chain concept, to heighten it, so that we can enhance Asian intra-Asian trade, which is now at the level of 55% of the global trade of Asia. This is one of the highest in the world, lower only against when you measure against the trade, intra-European trade, and also inside NAFTA. But this is one of the highest in the world. So they want to enhance this. They want to jump across the middle income trap by coming away from the cheap labor base, just being able to put things together into one which can control distribution network, R&D. That's why I went to Germany and I saw a lot of people who are now investing with us in the area of education. Education is important, and now several German universities are helping, university in Busan, in China, in Vietnam, in Thailand, in Singapore, to train electrical engineers, for example. So much this last few years. So when you look at the figures of Asia, you tend to see the kind of quantitative figures. Asia, with a few billion people, we have 60% of the global humanities. We are bound to produce at least that much. But that doesn't say anything. When China becomes the largest exporter of the world, for me, it doesn't say anything. You are the largest in terms of population. In a few years now, they'll be the largest economy in the world, so it doesn't say anything because you're the largest. But it means that at the moment, we are going through a transition period that Asian economies will have to look at quality, inclusive development, equality, gender equality, geographical equality, opportunities equalities. In terms of infrastructure, it has to be in terms that you don't have digital divide, you have to be able to communicate, and you have to be able to transport goods in the most efficient way. That's why China is putting up what now we call, and I would end by doing this, China is putting up what we call a big Asian Marshall Plan. I talked already at the beginning, and I said I will say this at the end. This is the so-called the renewal of the Silk Road. This is a pretext to create funds, 40 billion of funds at the beginning to invest in the Silk Road, which means that would help to try to construct roads, railways, improve towns, cities, custom procedures along the road from China to Europe, also around the maritime. You know that at the moment you can ride on the train from Chongqing in the western part of China to Antwerp, the port of Antwerp. They're carrying out goods from the western part of China through this train connection, which will take about 15 days. It saves a week instead of transporting things through the eastern side. So this is one thing which we are seeing, and China has set up another big bank, which is called the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank, AIIB, which the US is not very comfortable with, so US is not joining. It's not joining. Why US is not joining? US is saying, look, we have the World Bank, why don't we use the World Bank? The Asians are saying, the Chinese are saying, and Thailand is joining, and there are 27 participants. We're saying, this is huge. This is something that we need more banks, as many as possible, because ADB also has set up the infrastructure fund. So now this bank has been set up. Just a few days ago, UK has just signed to become the first advanced country's membership of this bank, and the US was a little bit, nervous about it. But anyway, they said, well, there are too many banks like this, and the standard might not be there. But I just would like to relay all this information to you, so that you would know that the way that economic trade, macroeconomic policies in all these countries, geopolitical play, why the Maritime Silk Route? Maritime Silk Route in the past, 1,000 years ago, was not much, but this day hope to be revived because of all this geopolitical confrontation, all these islands around Southeast Asia. So this is something which the aim of the present leadership of Asia is moving to. And I just like to end by give you a small quote from President John F. Kennedy, which I like very much. And he said something like this. He said, if a free society cannot help the many that are poor, it cannot save the few that are rich. And this is the philosophy that we are operating at the moment in Asia. Thank you very much for your attention.